All right, my Renowned fam, welcome back to the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Morris, and I am so excited to be here. And as always, I got an amazing guest lined up for you today. Today we got Mrs. Lauri Smith. She's a world-renowned public speaking coach and leadership coach. She's also the author of the book, Your Voice Matters, a guide to speaking soulfully when it counts. And of course, she's the Caring Visionary Officer, the CVO of Voice Matters. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here we go with Mrs. Lauri Smith. All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining this week's episode of the Renowned Leadership Podcast. And today I'm joined with a very special guest, Mrs. Lauri Smith, or Miss, I'm sorry, I guess I should have clarified that before we started. But either way, Lauri Smith, who is a expert voice coach. That's pretty awesome. I've never worked with a voice coach. I probably should, because I absolutely despise the sound of my voice. You have no idea how hard it is to edit this. You laugh. I'm dead serious. Like
I believe you. I believe you. It's a common thing. Looking at ourselves on video or listening to our voices is really challenging.
So how do you help people overcome that?
Well, the first thing I would say is not to be focusing on the sound of your voice, to be focusing instead on the impact that you want to be having with your voice.
Okay.
If you have specific cravings for your voice, like if you're wanting it to sound more full or something like that, there are ways to work on that. And most of the time I find that it's the inner critic. There is the way you feel about your voice is not how the rest of the world feels about your voice. And it sounds different to your inner ear than it does when you listen to a recording. So then when you listen to a recording, there's a bit of like, but wait, that isn't my voice, because we're hearing our voices more with our inner ear than we are the way we hear other people's voices. So there's a whole lot contributing to that.
That's crazy. I never thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's some good stuff right there. Yeah. Because the sound of my voice doesn't bother me. Like, as I'm sitting here talking to you now, it doesn't bother me at all. But when I hear myself on the recording, when I go back to edit it and approve it and everything, get ready to sip it off to the world, it's like, oh God, how do people listen to me? I'm so annoying.
That's not how we're feeling.
Right. Fair enough. So how long have you been working in the speaking, in the voice coach game?
About 15 years.
Okay. How did you get started?
Good question. Voice coach without also being a public speaking coach. I never wanted to be one. I was working a day job as an executive assistant and doing theater at night, and started craving a more aligned life where what I was doing during the day was, kind of felt like it went with what I was doing at night. So I decided to go back and get a master's degree in theater. And I thought I was going to be a full-time theater instructor. And I talked to a couple of friends and mentors, and one of them at the time, 2005, said jobs are really hard to get in the theater. They're almost non-existent, except for voice coaches. And at that time, I actually went, oh, I would never be a voice coach. Because for the most part, I hadn't liked the ones that I had had up until that point, or it was kind of like an old school voice coaching where everyone was supposed to sort of sound like movie stars from the 40s and the 50s and newscasters, which is not very authentic. And I didn't want that. And then when I went to school, I came across what I call the new wave of voice instructors, which is more about opening up your instrument, which is you, so that you can make any sound and you can play any type of character, from a king to the fool to someone from Nebraska, Australia, you name it, you can play anyone from anywhere. And I was very drawn to that. And it was like the universe just kept calling me more and more and more to go toward this voice thing. And at first I was still kind of going, no, that's not me. And then as a graduate student in theater, I found myself voice coaching the undergraduate production. I think I was supposed to be their advisor, and I just found myself jumping up and doing voice exercises with them to help open up their performance to get what the directors were wanting from them. And then I decided to go study something called Fitzmaurice voice work, which was what the teacher that was there when I went back for grad school that I thought was so different. Suddenly I thought, hey, I'm actually going to apply and go study this. Mm-hmm. And then came out and taught voice at the school where the two mentors had been that I had talked to and said, hey, we need voice coaches. That didn't last that long. I transitioned more into working with, now I'm calling them ambitious empaths, sensitive visionaries, and loving rebels, using this voice-based approach to public speaking to help open up their charisma, and using some things from acting, but not teaching them to act, just kind of teaching them to be present in the moment and have their voice fully expressive.
That's really fascinating. And so this literally has nothing to do with anything. I'm just curious, why back in the 40s and the 50s? Because you're right. When I think about, like, a good example, recently I watched an old Sean Connery James Bond. Mm-hmm. I think it was Diamonds Are Forever or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the way they speak and their acting is completely different than the way we see our movie stars do it today. Why is that?
Yeah. I'm probably forgetting some of the details, and what I remember is actors were not very respected in the early 1900s. So in order to get some respect, they kind of invented an accent or a dialect here in the United States to elevate the profession, to get people to stop seeing them like prostitutes were seen, and elevate them a bit. And then that lasted for a while, so that once that dialect or accent was learned, everyone was speaking that way. And then people got tired of that, and people started wanting characters that had more range. Because Shakespeare is a great example. It doesn't work as well for an audience member if your king and your fool and your soldiers all sound the same, because in real life, most of the time, your king and your fool and your soldier, or your person from Australia, Nebraska, and the United Kingdom, they do not sound the same. So it helps with character work, but it was originally created to kind of get some respect for the profession of acting.
So it was an intentional thing. That's very interesting. Yeah. So yeah. I'm sorry, everybody, for totally diving off that cliff. I was curious. So thank you for indulging my curiosity.
Of course.
So you talk about public speaking, which is one of my favorite things in the world to do. I love to be on a stage. I am a very energetic and what's the word? Not eccentric. Where you
extroverted.
Get extroverted. There you go. Thank you. I'm a very extroverted person, so I love to be in front of people. I love to be talking to people, and the more energy they give me, the more energy I have to throw back at them. It's so much fun. However, I've learned that a lot of the best public speakers are not like me. They're very introverted. Simon Sinek is a great example. Mm-hmm. How would you coach someone who might be listening, who wants to public speak? They're just too scared. that introverted soul is just holding them back. How do you help them overcome that?
Yeah. One of the first things that I would want them to know is that if there are 7.9 billion different people on the planet, there are 7.9 billion different types of charisma. One of the reasons that I feel like I exist is to help people do it their way.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't want someone who's more like Simon Sinek to see you and think, oh, I have to do that in order to be good. No, that's good on you. Simon Sinek, you wouldn't want to try to be like him when you speak. His style is his style. Your style is your style. When you own your style, you have a better chance of coming alive from head to toe. So that's kind of the first thing is, and it can take some time to break habits of trying to mimic what the world has been saying is good. The world will go through phases. Someone will be a great speaker. JFK. Oh, that's charisma. No, that's JFK's charisma. So knowing that you are capable of charisma if you're one of the 7.9 billion people on the planet, and the way to get there is to do it your way. The other thing for most introverts is they wouldn't want to do it if it weren't for, speaking of Simon Sinek, some why. What's your why? There's something that's bigger than you and bigger than your fear that's calling you to even entertain the possibility of speaking. Keep focusing on that. And then when you do speak, focus on setting an intention that's related to that why. So I'm trying to think of what something for Simon might be. I feel like Simon Sinek could focus on watching light bulbs go off, like energetic light bulbs in people when he's speaking, because he has ideas that sort of shift things sideways or up on their head. So when he speaks, he might get up on the stage and look for those light bulb moments in the audience. And when your attention is on those light bulb moments, they're more likely to happen. It also takes the reins away from our inner critic. Instead of, do they like me? Did I say something wrong? Am I going to forget? We're focused on seeing light bulbs go off in the audience, which is really aligned with why I'm an introvert too, believe it or not, why we would be getting up in the first place.
That's incredible. And I've never thought of it that way. The only thing I can really compare it to is this. In the military, I did public speaking a lot in the military. It's kind of required of us, whether it's training, in your unit or company or, the entire army, foreign armies, like public speaking is something we have to learn in order to be a leader. And it was hard at first, I think, if I remember right, but it wasn't hard for long. Once I realized like all I had to do was get them to laugh one time. And if I could get them to laugh, I could keep them engaged the entire time I was talking. And once I figured that out, it kind of made it super easy for me. And I'm not talking like opening up with cheesy jokes. It's usually like poking fun at myself. Like I'll forget, like I forgot, a specific word or a specific title or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, look how dumb I am or something. Make some sort of joke about it, and that usually gets them a chuckle and they get engaged. And from that, I have them, and it's a lot easier to keep them. When I started doing this, however, talking into a microphone and into a camera, and not always someone on the other end, and even with someone on the other end, it's still hard because I really can't feel your energy. So man, it was hard. So I can relate in that sense, like trying to find the new way to get your energy, because I agree with you completely. Finding that one thing that can feed you while you're on stage and make you forget all the nonsense is so important. because
Yeah.
I learned also the very hard way. If you focus on, I cannot forget to say this, I cannot forget this cue, I cannot forget this thing, you're going to forget it
Yeah.
every single time.
Yep.
And so, like, I don't even prepare a speech anymore. Like, I'll write a speech
Mm-hmm.
and then to know what I want to talk about. So it's in my
Mm-hmm.
head, kind of. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'll make bullet points to practice. And then once I'm on stage, I'm just talking, man. I have no notes, no cue cards, no nothing. It's whatever comes out, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if that's the correct way because I've never had a speaking coach before, but for me, it works. I feel like, and I get pretty good results. So, thank you for indulging that very long
Yeah.
story. But so, one of the most important things I had to overcome also was I say so a lot. A lot of people say incessantly, like what others are there? You know what I'm talking about, those fillers. How do
Mm-hmm.
you coach people away from them? My approach is, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, my approach has just been, eh, if I say it, I say it. It's not the end of the world. I try not to say it a million times, but I say it, every, couple of minutes, it's okay.
Yeah. I do too. Since we were just talking about this a bit, focusing on them and the approach of I'm going to count them and then I'm going to try to say less of them is not what I recommend. What I recommend is that I have a graphic I'm going to pull up. We're sort of trained to talk like this. And I ask
Okay.
people to stop talking and inhale and talk more like that. That eliminates most of the so's. So stop talking and breathe. And when you inspire air, the next thought will come in and there will be far less so's and ums and likes, because most of those come when the person feels like they have to make nonstop noise. So the so's, oh, here's what I actually want to say next, will happen instead of, here's what I want to say next. And the audience actually gets to emotionally and mentally digest what we're saying when we put some of those pauses in. It's like music. The space is as important as the notes. In art, it's the white space that reveals the image. And in speaking, the silences and the words dance together to create the meaning. We're not supposed to just keep talking and talking and talking and talking and never have any silence.
I love that. And that applies to so many things. One of the first things, because in the military, we're not taught sales. So that was something I had to learn when I came out of the military. And then when I started my own company, I'm like, I'm not a salesman. And they're like, dude, yeah, you are. Like, you own your own business, you're a salesman. Hate to break it to you. You have to learn how to sell. And it's like, this sucks. One of the most powerful things I learned in sales is the power of silence. Just shut up and let them think.
Yeah.
And the more you talk, the more they feel pressured. And just shut up for a second and let them think.
Yeah.
And coaching is the same thing, the power of the silence. Just shut up and let them think. And so I absolutely love that. I've never thought of it applied to public speaking, but you're absolutely right. The same rule applies. Just shut up and let them think. And that's going to make your speech resonate with them more ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Then it can become a conversation where their half is either silence or laughter or tears. Sometimes they'll actually make noises like, mm-hmm. Or if you ask a question of the audience, they might verbally answer. And for the most part, it's a conversation where one person is talking and the others are nodding, laughing, crying.
right. And that emotion is so important to me. I absolutely have to have it. I can't do it without it. I mean, I can, but I don't enjoy it. And so one of the problems I have is I talk really, really fast, and that's the Army's fault. The Army's taught me to communicate at a million miles an hour. And it's funny because people are like, dude, slow down. What exercises would you give me? Is it breathing? Just breathe? Or I feel like that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, people always feel like that's not going to be enough, and it is and it isn't. There's two pieces that I would go to first. One part is the breath, and it's sort of a pet peeve of mine when people only tell a fast talker to slow down. Because because it can feel like now I'm like a horse and I'm like the brakes are on. If I just say slow down, you're going to feel like the brakes are on. And when are you going to take your foot off the brake so I can actually unleash? So if you think about music, there are fast songs and there are slow songs. But in order for it to be a song and not me, who does not play piano, just sitting down at the piano and like hitting the keys nonstop, it's the silences. So you can be a fast talker if you have some moments of silence and some moments of breath. That's part of it. The other part is actually watching our nonverbal half of the conversation and making sure that we're with you. So then what will happen is, without even realizing it, you have an intention for an impact that you want to have. And like a river rafting guide, you're making sure that we're still all in the boat with you, or in the raft with you. So within your natural range, you'll slow down or speed up based on what you can tell is happening with us. And it feels much more organic and much more natural and easy than if I just said slow down. I've never seen the slow down. The only way I've ever seen the slow down work is that someone who talks fast gets slow. It's like it sort of works if all you want is a presentation that's clear, maybe in a corporate environment.
Yeah,
but it's not going to move anybody.
Right.
Yeah, it's not going to touch anybody's hearts. They might get it here, but they're not going to be with you, heart and soul, following your talk.
Well, absolutely. And that makes total sense because part of speaking is passion, right? Part of the reason we love Simon so much is because you breathe his passion. Not only can you feel it, you're inhaling it, it's on you, it's like a blanket. And that passion, John Maxwell's another one, Martin Luther King, dude's passion poured out of the TV.
Yeah.
And you could feel it. So
yeah,
that authenticity, which you already touched on a little bit. I go ahead and touch on that authenticity piece again, because that's so important. Not just, again, going back to sales, if you're not authentic when you're selling, your sales aren't going to be near as good as if you're just being your authentic self and relating this product to your client through your authenticity. So, and it's the same with public speaking. If you're not authentic, it's not going to resonate.
Yeah, it almost, the best metaphor, well, not the best, one of the metaphors that I love for the inauthenticity, if you're trying to do it someone else's way, some of the listeners out there may be too young for this, but there used to be radio dials, turning dials to hit a radio station. And if you were a little bit off of the station, you got static with the voices kind of coming through. That is what the world looks like to me when someone is not quite being their full selves, when they think there's some way that they should be. Whereas when they snap into doing it their way, and then their body, their breath, their energy is all aligned to help them express fully. It's like when you turn the dial and you got the station right on the mark, and you could pretty much hear it with no static. I mean, if we actually listen back to a 1980s radio station right now, it would have static, but it had far less when you would actually get it lined up with the perfect station mark.
I love that you bring this up because I was just thinking about this today because I love old record players with old records. And I'll even go to YouTube and just YouTube the playing of whatever song or album it is I want to hear on a record on vinyl, so I can have that static and crackle. And I realized it's that when I listen to it on Spotify, it's too perfect, and I don't feel as connected to it. And I literally had this thought today. And the old classic, I don't remember, was it 20 millimeter? I don't even remember what they were, but the old classic records, they weren't perfect, and they had static, and they had those cracks, and they had those tiny little imperfections that would make sound that interrupted the music. And I love that imperfection in it. And that's one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn is perfection. No one wants perfection because they can't relate to perfection. That's why I think Batman is a much more popular superhero than Superman, because we can all relate to a rich guy that knows karate. We can't relate to an alien that's literally indestructible.
Yeah.
Batman's not perfect. Superman is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that part of it? Like just accepting your imperfections. It's okay that they're there. It's okay that I say so every once in a while.
Yeah.
And the audience is going to be like, he just said so again. And then it becomes a running joke. Yeah, I know. I said so. Let's keep count. The winner who gets the closest, gets a door prize or whatever. And but that relates and connects, does it not?
Yeah. I think things that look perfect or are trying to be perfect, we're not as related to that. And in recording nowadays, like pop music, they do things to make the voice more perfect. And sometimes if you hear someone live and then you hear what they've done to try to make it perfect in the recording, it's almost like they've somehow flattened it out. It sounds thinner or more tinny or something weird. Whereas when you see that person, hear that person, and feel that person sing live, there may be some cracks and pops and imperfections, and yet your hairs might be standing up on end because something more full is coming across than what they've done to flatten out the voice in the studio.
Right. So I definitely relate to that. I love that. And so I want to transition a little bit, said so again, to you also help or coach within leadership. And I'm going to take a wild guess and assume that is how leaders should be communicating.
I believe it's time for authentic communication for leaders. A lot of times I write leader with a capital L because I'm trying to convey it's not the leaders that we grew up with, which Simon would probably call the command and control leaders. It's inspirational leaders or transformational leaders who are inspiring and empowering the people around them. What's his quote? Leadership is not a rank. I can't remember it. See, it's a great quote. Do you know it? Leadership is a something. It is not a rank. I can't remember what the quote is, but I remember him
something
saying
along the line. Leadership's not a rank; it's a service.
Something like that. Yeah.
Talking about how if you want to be a true, authentic, and effective leader, you need to be a servant to your followers.
Yeah. And my view of a visionary or a leader, there's three things that we need to have or to develop that not everyone does. We need to have a vision for a better world. We need to be able to navigate creatively from this present moment toward making that vision a reality. And then we also need to communicate in a way that inspires others and maybe even calls other people forth into their own leadership to join us on the quest to make that new vision real. And that doesn't come just from the head. It doesn't come from a command and control type of public speaking. It comes from the imperfections and being vibrant and alive from head to toe and being in your passion and having your passion radiate through your body and beyond into the crowd.
All right, everybody, I just want to interrupt the podcast really, really quick and take a minute to tell you all about the brand new Renowned coaching system. This is a system I've personally designed and put a lot of thought and effort and love into. It's an amazing system. Let me tell you real quick why it's an amazing system, because you get real time analytics. You get to see exactly where you were when you started, where you currently are, and how close you are to achieving that ultimate goal that you set at the very beginning. You get analytics for everything. More importantly, the accountability with this system is the best you'll find anyplace else in the world. I get to see everything that's going on and make sure that you are staying accountable to the goals you set. It's truly powerful. You guys just got to see it for yourself. Go to renownedleadership.com, go to the top right-hand corner, click book a call. You'll get to come talk to me personally, and I will personally give you a tour of this system. It is truly amazing. It's one of a kind, and it's truly, truly powerful. I'm so excited. I can't wait to show y'all. That's all I got to say about it. So let's get back to the podcast. Absolutely, 110%. And that when I'm working with my coaching my leadership clients, there are two things that I really focus on in the very beginning. One is your personal relationships, right? You can't be an effective leader unless you have a good, solid personal relationship with your team. And most people will say, "Oh, well, we can't be their friends." Well, you can be a friend without being a friend, right? Like there's a distinct difference. But you should know their birthday, their anniversary, their parents. Like you should know everything about them that they're willing to share, obviously. And then there's the part of vision. And if you don't see the vision of where you're trying to take your people, it's like trying to navigate a map in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
You're just never going to find it. And
Yeah.
it's so frustrating because they'll be like, "Oh, I have a vision." "Oh, that's great. What is it?" "Well, it's hard to explain." "Well, then that's a huge problem. You need to be able to
Yeah.
explain it." How do you coach people on learning to explain their vision? I know that's a loaded question. Do the best you can, though.
How do I do that? It depends a lot on the person and where they are. And I do a lot of group public speaking programs. And one of the things that can happen, some people have so many ideas that it's a matter of kind of listening and reflecting back. Here are some themes, asking questions to get them to go deeper. As you know, from being a coach,
Mm-hmm.
you ask them a question. What do you love about that? What's really important about that? When you hear certain things, and then they'll get more of a focused, okay, the heart of the vision is this. Now I know what it is. And now I can communicate it to other people, maybe with a few more steps. Some people come in thinking they don't have a story, they don't have a vision, they don't have a message. And we will do public speaking exercises where they're speaking something that they're passionate about week after week after week. And then over time, they'll get an assignment to come up with a talk that's their transformation talk. What is your message for the world? Something like that, or at this time. And if they do a one-on-one with me, they'll hop on saying that they don't have one. And then they'll keep talking and I'll listen. And at the end of an hour with them, I'll be able to hold up a piece of paper, or now it's my iPad, hold it up and say, so here's the outline for the first draft of your talk. And everything that's on here was something that you said, or it was a theme that I was picking up from what you said. Here's your first draft. Go ahead and delete what doesn't work for you and use that to make future drafts. That's kind of a big 60,000 foot view of the two ends of the spectrum of how I work with people to communicate their vision, to get clear on it, and then to communicate it.
That's actually a really good idea. I've never thought of that. One of my favorite tools is, you know, most people will have tried to explain their vision. They just won't have done it effectively. And so one of my favorite exercises is, okay, go ask your team what questions they have and do it in an email, and then don't answer. Just tell them you'll get back to them. And, they'll sometimes they'll go and they'll come back with 10 questions. Other times they'll come back with like a list of 100. It's like, all right, now once you've answered those questions, now you can effectively articulate your vision. And,
Yeah.
And then it goes back to that person relationship of they need to be, when they're not clear, they need to be able to ask, because if they're scared to ask you, it's not gonna do you any good.
Yeah.
So now, one of the biggest things I help people with, I would say, is fear, overcoming fear. And my keynote is Action Breeds Clarity. It's a story about me jumping out of an airplane because I'm deathly scared of heights, and the Army told me I had to, and I didn't want to. And effectively, what happened is I got pushed out of an airplane. Right. So what I learned is, when I have fear, if I take a step into that fear and start taking action towards it, all of a sudden my clarity, I start gaining clarity, and the more clarity I gain, the less I have to be fearful of, and that fear just kind of like a fog going away in the mid-morning sun. It just kind of dissipates off to the side, and you're able to see clearly and perform effectively. How do you view fear? And I don't necessarily think fear is a bad thing. I think fear is normal. I think we've put a stigma on having a fear, and it's very unhealthy. I'm just curious what your take on that is, because you know how it can be, especially in theater. Like, good God,
Yeah.
and imagine getting on a live stage and having that fear of forgetting your lines, because you can't really improvise a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I agree with you. I feel like we're saying fear for a lot of things that are more like nervousness, anticipation, sensation. So if I'm about, I did go on once, twice, as an understudy for the lead in a play that was 2 hours and 45 minutes long, on stage the whole time, that opened with a 7-minute monologue directly to the audience with no one who could save me. There's a lot of sensation when you get that phone call 75 minutes before the play is supposed to start. You need to get to the theater now. I can label that sensation fear, or I could label it something else. I find it's really helpful for public speakers. I label it things like scare-citement or nerve-citement, so that it's honoring. Part of me really wants to say I'm terrified, but part of me is actually really excited.
Right.
And when I was going through Fitzmaurice voice work training, a scientist who was also a voice instructor came in and told us about a study that they had done where they put those little electrode thingies all over someone's body. Fear and excitement are neighboring emotions. So if we can reframe it as excitement or scare-citement or something like that, things start to shift. A colleague of mine also told me that a study was done for people taking math tests, people speaking publicly, and singers. And in each of those groups, they broke them down into 2 camps. For one half, they said, try to calm down. For the other half of each group, they said, just keep saying, I'm so excited to give this speech. I'm so excited to finally take this math test. In your mind, just keep saying, I'm so excited, I'm so excited, I'm so excited. And in all three, the people that were trying to calm down scored worse. Now, for public speaking, that was subjective. But for the math test and the people singing, the math tests were higher for the people who said, I'm so excited I finally get to take this math test. And for the singers, they were better in terms of actually hitting the pitches. And they scored higher on the performance. So that's part of how I deal with fear. And I really like something like nerve-sighted or scare-sighted as the, like, I understand it feels like what you have, all this sensation, your heart pumping faster, sweaty palms, sweaty armpits, sweaty back. It feels like fear. And it actually is not the same thing as if a bear walked into this room and was going to kill one of us. So the more we can reframe it, the more your body's going to start to get it's a different thing. It is thrilling, like going on a roller coaster, and public speaking should feel that way. The other thing about fear, for, like, let's even remove public speaking. People who are courageous, like if I look at you and I go, oh my gosh, he jumped out of an airplane. Okay, you were pushed, but I'll just say I see a courageous person. Whereas the person on the inside who's taking the one more step, the one more step, the one more step, on the inside, you may have been feeling fear. When we see you take one more step and one more step, we're calling it courage. And later, when you look back on it, you might be able to embrace, hey, actually, that was courageous. I kept putting one foot in front of the other. So it's an interesting catch-22 about courage. The person in it often doesn't realize they're being courageous.
Absolutely. 100%. Actually, when my feet left the plane, they could hear me screaming on the ground because I was screaming so loud.
Yeah.
You, as a voice coach, you would have been proud. My voice was pretty high octaves that day.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to guess it was coming really supported with a lot of breath behind it.
But yeah, it was in the moment, all I could feel was fear. And that's where my talk comes from, is once I realized, like, I got to stop, I got to take control, because otherwise I'm going to die, which that thought wasn't true either, but I'm glad I had it. Because it caused me to take control of my situation. And once I took control, I realized, yeah, now that I'm focused on taking control, I don't have time to be scared anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've jumped out of an airplane more times than I can count willingly without being pushed.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always that fear, because I am still scared of heights. I still don't like it, but that fear no longer controls me. And one of my favorite practices, before I go on a podcast, or before I do public speaking, or even before I meet a client for the first time, the very first coaching session with a client is really stressful for me, really nervous. And so what I'll do is just close my eyes, and I'll have that negative thought, right? Because that's what fear ultimately is. It's a bunch of negative outcomes of what's about to happen. And so I close my eyes, I have that negative thought very present, I count backwards from 5, and then I have a predetermined positive thought. So if it's public speaking, it's getting a standing ovation, and everybody completely resonated with my talk, and they absolutely loved me. And, they're asking me for my autograph at the end. I don't know. But, before, every time I have something already predetermined what I'm going to use. And once I hit one, I literally force that thought into my brain, and I keep it there for a few seconds. And then once I'm done, it's like you take a deep breath, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I've done this a million times. It's not that bad. Or I've done this before. It's not that bad. Or this is new. Hopefully it's not going to be that bad. And,
Mm-hmm.
It's so much better. I know a lot of public speakers will, go off on their own for a few minutes before they give a talk, and they'll be giving themselves, positive affirmations, or they'll just kind of be, like athletes do, be jumping up and down, trying to get their blood circulating and get themselves psyched up. There are tons and tons of techniques out there to help overcome that fear. And I think when we take a good look at it and realize that that's what it is, because we see athletes do it every Sunday, right? And they're on a football field, they're trying to keep warm, but they're also trying to keep that blood circulating, because as long as it's circulating, that fear is less, has less control over our bodies.
Yeah, it feels like it's energy. And if we get like frozen because of the fear, it doesn't have anywhere to go. If we jump up and down, if we speak aloud, if we make noises or whatever it is, then that stuff has somewhere to go, which is really helpful. Actors, when we audition, a lot of times you go in, you do the monologue, and then as soon as the director says, okay, can you do it again and tweak this one little thing about it? That's when the fun of acting kicks in, because the energy is already moving and now the person is kind of like playing with you. So if you jump up and down or do things to get the blood flowing ahead of time, it's kind of like you got yourself halfway to the exhilaration point before you did the scary thing, instead of just walking in a little stiff and starting.
I love that so much. I actually was coaching one of my people on that the other day, because they were talking about, like, well, I just want to take a break. It's like, great, take a break. Take all the time in the world you need. Just do me one favor, just one solid. Spend 30 minutes on it a week. Just 30 minutes a week, or 30 minutes a day. Just a little bit of time every so often to keep your momentum going, because it's a lot easier to run from a walk than it is from standing still.
Yeah.
It's really, I don't know if you've ever tried it. It's not easy to run when you're standing perfectly still. But if you're walking, it's super easy to take off running. And, and it's the same concept. Like, this is, a business with my client, it's a business thing, but with what you're talking about, it's the same concept. It's so much easier once it's already that motion. It's so much easier just to continue that motion all the way through. And one of the other things that I really have found has helped me a lot, and I don't want to beat up on this too much, but I kind of do, because it's so important, is authenticity. I learned when I stopped trying to be Simon, when I stopped trying to be John Maxwell, when I stopped trying to be all these other people and just be Stephen, a lot of that fear just, oof.
Yeah. Yeah, because a part of you knows you will never be Simon.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if you keep trying to do that, it's like there's a part that's going, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Well, they're right about the piece of you trying to be Simon.
Mm-hmm.
They're not right about the whole public speaking thing.
Right. That's so interesting. I never thought of it exactly like that. Huh. So how do actors do it?
We all do it differently. Most stage actors, I won't even say most. I warm up, so I do a whole physical and vocal warm up to get the energy flowing. I'm an empath. I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm an introvert. So I really need that in order to feel like I can go out there and be deeply present with the crowd. And when I went on as the understudy, the first time that I did that, I got the vocal warm up in the car. I was like making sounds to warm up my voice in the car, in the pouring rain on the way to the theater. And when I got there, we had to do things like work all of the fights in the like for you do that anyway, but when an understudy is going on, you really run the fights, because you have to make sure that no one's going to get hurt because the understudy doesn't know what they're doing. And we ran a scene that we hadn't even gotten to in the understudy run through that had a lot of lights and sounds. And then it was like, okay, you have 10 minutes to go change clothes and do the show. And when I put on the outfit, I had about 5 minutes left. And my mind started to try to like go through an entire 2 hour and 45-minute show in my head. And I just went, nope, we're not doing that. And I dropped to the ground and did very grounding presencing, like, here I am, this is the carpet backstage. I'm going to do like some twists and some physical warm-up things until they come usher me to my place, because it was a big enough theater that like I didn't have to find my way when I didn't know where I was going. I'd never been back there before. They just, anytime I came off stage, there's someone there to change your clothes. They took me over to my spot. And I set intentions for how I wanted it to go. Like, I'm going to channel the story. I'm even going to channel a little bit of the main actress's energy and wisdom somehow. And I'm going to be present and very like getting things to flow and being present with the crowd and really being present and kind of surrendered to the other actors. I walked out there and I did the monologue, and there was a moment where I did not know what came next. And I inhaled, and sure enough, something else to say. I became inspired when I inspired the air, and something came out of my mouth that was another one of the lines. I had no idea if I had skipped a page or what. I looked it up at intermission. I skipped one line that was a joke that I loved. It was actually one of my favorite lines, but it didn't really tie to anything important. So that was great. And then when the monologue was over, the lights shift and I go sit down at a bar and there's another actor there. And I looked at him and then like really looked at him and realized he does this show 8 times a week. So for the next hour, I'm going to be with all of these people that always do the show. If I forget, they're going to save me. I had one other moment where I just completely didn't realize it was time for my line. And fortunately, the other character was like a witch doctor, a witch. I'm not thinking of the right word, but like she just looked at me and said, I can see you have hesitation, or something, as if she was I think she even like pulled as if she was like pulling a spirit away from my head, and said my line, like, I can see this is what you're thinking. And I was like, wow, that was amazing. And after that, all of the other understudies were asking me, like, what do we need to watch out for? What do we need to watch out for? Like that danger, fear-driven thing. And I said, you don't need to watch out for anything. What you need to trust in is that when you go on, you're going on not with the rest of us understudies, though we did a run through like that, but when you go on in front of the full sold out house, everybody else on stage with you has been living and breathing this thing, and they will cover for anything that could possibly happen. That's what you need to know. So go out there and have a good time when you go on. And a couple weeks later, the understudy for the witch doctor woman went on, same as me, with hardly any notice. And she was like, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. I had a blast. And then both of us got to go on more than once. So I don't know how every actor does it. That's kind of, those are some of the ways that I do it in the most intense, most like I could have chosen the fear and shut down circumstances. And I'll boil it all down after a huge long story. Most actors have some kind of ritual, like a warm up, that is their personal ritual that like tells their body, this is what's happening next. This is what we're doing now. And we're all very, very different in what that ritual is.
Nice. I love that you shared that story. And if y'all heard that, I have a new German Shepherd puppy, and I think she just got her paw caught in the door or something. So I don't know. My wife's taking care of her right now, and she was crying.
Oh
I hope she's
no.
okay. But no, thank you for sharing that story. That was very inspirational. And do you still act today?
I do. Yeah.
Do any what shows are you doing right now?
I am not in one right now. In the fall, I don't know what roles I'm going to be playing, but we're doing The Legend of Sleepy Hollow
Oh, that's cool.
and something that something with it, like a shorter version of Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and then something called Ghost Stories with it. Um, so
That's
it's
really
going to be
cool.
fun.
That's fun.
Yes, starting
I,
rehearsals in September.
is stage acting something you see yourself doing pretty much forever?
Probably until, I can't really walk around on the stage anymore.
Yeah.
It's always, I took a 5-year break from it by accident, and other than that, I kind of crave it all the time. I'm also a writer and a director, and somebody asked me years and years ago when I started doing some directing, are you more fulfilled by directing now? And I said, no, I like all three of them. And acting is the one that I crave doing the most
Hmm.
often. And then directing or writing would just kind of pop up every so often. Oh, now it's time to do that. And then I would crave acting again. And when you were talking earlier about the difference between you speaking in front of a live audience and like being on camera when there's no one there, I thought, yep, if he were an actor, he would be a stage actor just like me. It's so scary to some people that they don't want to do it. They want to be able to do a gazillion takes in order
Hmm.
to be free, because that frees them up, knowing if I forget something, if it doesn't come out right, we'll
Right.
just do it again and again and again. Some of us really like the pulse of the crowd, and it's like it's different every night because the crowd is different.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And I was literally about to ask you, have you ever considered pursuing a big film career, or is the live stage where you've always wanted to be and where you're going to stay?
Live stage, not that I wouldn't do a film, and I had an agent for a while in my 20s, um, because that's what you're supposed to do. I really love stage and prefer stage.
The skills are completely different, are they not?
Some of them are the same, like, listening to what's underneath what's being said is there, whether you're shooting a film or you're on stage.
Hmm.
And there's a little bit more of expanding your energy outward when you're on stage. Whereas in film, everything is physically more subtle and smaller. And it's like you're allowing the camera in rather than projecting yourself outward.
Hmm.
Um, like in stage, your blocking that you all memorize is like, well, I cross a 45-foot stage at this point. And on film, it can be, I take a sip of water. And that's like, if you take a sip of water on stage, no one cares. If you take a sip of water on film, that's like a moment that's going to be edited around.
Right. That's interesting. And I think just in my head, it seems like stage acting would be a lot more difficult, from at least from my perspective anyway. And I've never been an actor. I've never wanted to be an actor, just thinking about it. Because in a film, you have CGI, you have computers, you have all these things to make your production come alive and seem real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But going to the live theater, they have props, stage props,
Mm-hmm.
and you know they have uh, a great example. One of my favorite things I've ever seen. My wife and I went to the Friends live. It was Friends something alive. It was the Friends TV show,
Mm-hmm.
but from the live stage production. And obviously, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the actual Friends cast. The cast did an amazing job portraying the Friends cast, though. That was hilarious. But the way they did their props, it literally made you feel like you were sitting in Monica's apartment the
Mm-hmm.
whole time. And I loved how drawn into it I felt, which I never really felt that from film. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a very special skill stage actors have in order to be able to use these props to really draw you in. Plus, what you're talking about, your stage presence and the projection of your energy, I think is very captivating from the live stage rather than from film.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially after the pandemic, being like together live in the same space with the people that are performing and the other people that are watching. I've always loved it. And after the pandemic, it's like everybody should be a little bit hungry for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because for a while there, we were doing a whole lot less of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me that was the roughest part of the pandemic is just I don't want to like be political or anything. I'm not scared of COVID. I've had much worse things try to kill me in my life. A virus, please. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and plus I've been vaccinated for literally everything under the sun. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously not COVID at the time, but anthrax, all typhoid, all that stuff. Anyway, so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, virus. I've dealt with worse. And so it didn't affect me like it did most people.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking down to anyone. Like if you were scared of COVID, it was a scary time. I'm not talking down. It's just it didn't affect me that way. So me being my normal self, like, hey guys, and everybody's like, eesh. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's like felt like something was wrong with me. But
Yeah.
no, I totally get it. And that's actually right at the end of COVID's when we went to see that Friends live show. And it was magical. It was one of the best live performances I've ever been to. And it was a
Nice.
lot of fun. So
Nice.
Lauri, thank you so much for joining me today. Go ahead and tell us how we can get a hold of you and everything you can do for us.
Yeah. The best way to get a hold of me is to go to my website. I know they'll be in the show notes, and I'll go ahead and say it's voice-matters.com. And then I am on a lot of the socials, and I can never remember what my handles are. So scroll down to the bottom if you like Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn more, and you can connect using the links at the bottom of the page. And my signature new baby, which is like Lauri's opus, is called The Speakers Studio, inspired in part, at least the name and the sentiment behind it, by that TV show Inside the Actors Studio. In 1947, three actors got together and formed the Actors Studio, and it ended up changing acting worldwide. And they originally did it because they believed that actors deserved a safe private space to be working on their acting that wasn't in front of the Broadway or the Hollywood casting directors. And since I work with a lot of introverts and empaths and sensitive visionary leaders, I kept looking around for a similar kind of space that's really private, sacred, doing deep work, and I didn't find one. So finally, I decided to create one of my own and name it the Speakers Studio.
That's so important. So important. I used to tell my soldiers all the time, don't come to me and complain about a problem unless you have a solution to pitch to me first. And it's not so much that I even cared about their solution. I just wanted them thinking.
Yeah.
And I love that. And that's the whole reason I created Renowned is because I saw a problem and rather than complain about it, I want to do something about it. So
Yeah.
totally love that energy. That's amazing. And of course, like she said, all the links are going to be in the show notes or the description or whatever platform you're on. You know what I'm talking about. It's down below. Go find it. And while you're at it, head over to all her stuff. Make sure you give her plenty of love, follow, likes, all that stuff, whatever platform it is. And I gripe about this every single show. It's so annoying that it's all different. You have follow, like, comment, like you have, like each platform has its own, like
Yeah.
5-star, like just make it universal, please.
Yeah.
So we can just say one thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, so make sure you do all that. And Lauri, before I let you go, every guest on my show has the opportunity to get the final word of wisdom in. So my last question to you is, what's your best piece of advice, your best pearl of wisdom to help someone lead like a champion?
You are a unique and beautiful soul. Your voice is needed in the world.
There you go. I'm not even going to say anything else. So that's going to wrap it up this week, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Renowned. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. And of course, see you next week. And don't forget, in the meantime, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everybody.
How I try to sleep, but you're deep in my mind. Got a hold of me. When I'm awake, I'm all blind.
All right, my fam, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Renowned Leadership Podcast. I hope you got just an immense amount of value out of listening to Lauri today. She's an incredible person, and she was an awesome guest to have. Make sure you head to voicematters.com. Go check her out. All her links are going to be below, so make sure you go show her tons of love. And then, as always, once you're done doing that, head over to renownedleadership.com and show me all the love as well. That's going to wrap it up for this week, guys. I will see you all next week. And as always, remember, lead like a champion. Goodbye, everybody.